Okay, let's just dive right in. On this show, we've looked at a ton of different role models, right?
Yeah, yeah. We've done athletes, CEOs.
Exactly. The athletes with their, 4.0 a.m. workouts, the CEOs with their big visionary leadership styles. We've even done historical figures like Marcus Aurelius.
The Stoics are always a popular one,
Yeah,
building
yeah.
that resilience.
For sure. And usually when we're talking about a guide to success, especially in a place like a boarding school, you're looking for someone smooth.
Right. Someone with high emotional intelligence. The social butterfly.
The person who just gets it. They know how to win friends and influence people. But today,
Today's a little different.
today we are looking at a source that points us in a completely different direction. We're looking at a fictional physicist who has a designated spot on the couch.
And if you sit there, you're in for a lecture.
A full-on meltdown. We are talking about Sheldon Cooper.
Yes. From the Big Bang Theory.
And look, if you are writing a guide on how to survive living in a dorm with 50 other teenagers, Sheldon is probably not the first name that comes to mind.
Not even in the top 20. He's rigid, he's socially awkward, doesn't get sarcasm at all.
And yet, we have this source material today, a really fascinating guide called What a Boarder Can Learn from Sheldon Cooper.
And it argues that he's actually the perfect, well, maybe not perfect, but a really important archetype for success in an academic community.
It's a bold claim. I mean, the source isn't saying you need to start wearing superhero t-shirts over long-sleeve shirts.
No, or knocking on doors 3 times.
But it is focusing on celebrating academic differences, on neurodiversity, and just the whole dynamic of living in a boarding house.
Well, and it tackles a really pervasive issue in education, especially in boarding schools where you live and learn in the same place. There's this huge pressure to conform, to be chill, to not look like you're trying too hard.
The too cool for school thing.
Exactly. But this guy just flips that whole script. It says the very things that make a Sheldon seem different are actually competitive advantages.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. Let's figure out why. How does being different actually help you win? And how does a boarding culture get better when it, embraces its inner Sheldon?
I'm ready. Where do we begin?
Let's start with just who is this person? The source gives us a pretty clear profile of the Sheldon type of learner.
And I think a lot of people listening will probably recognize themselves in this, or maybe their roommate.
I think so.
So the guide lists a few things. These are the students who love reading ahead in the textbook. And I mean love it. They're not doing it because they have to.
They're doing it because they genuinely want to know what's in Chapter 4 while everyone else is still on Chapter 2.
Right. And they're the ones asking a ton of questions in class.
To the point where other kids might start, sighing a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. They enjoy facts, systems, numbers. They want to know the rules of how things work.
And they love routines. We'll definitely get back to that one because it's a huge part of this.
It is. But the source points out that for these students, there's often this little voice in their head.
The nagging worry.
Yeah, that am I a little too different?
Which you describe as the anxiety of the high performer. Or, more specifically, the neurodivergent learner.
It is, and neurodiversity is a term the source uses quite a bit.
Can we just pause on that for a second? Because I think people hear that word a lot, but maybe aren't 100% sure what it means in this context.
It's a great question. So in this guide, it just means that there isn't one single normal way for a brain to work.
Okay.
Just like there isn't one normal hair color. It's this idea that differences in how we process information, autism, ADHD, or just a very specific way of thinking are just natural variations.
So it's not a bug, it's just a different operating system.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's like Windows versus Linux. Linux isn't broken just because it does things differently than Windows. It's just built for a different purpose.
And in a social world like a boarding house, where fitting in is so important, having a brain that runs on Linux can feel really isolating.
For sure. But this is where the source makes its big move. It looks at that anxiety and says, wait a minute, Sheldon Cooper reminds us of something really important.
Which is?
Being different in how you think isn't a weakness, it's a strength.
I love that reframing. It's like a direct challenge to this idea that you have to hide how smart you are to be liked.
Totally. The text points out that Sheldon is, quote, proud of being intelligent.
He doesn't try to hide that he loves studying. He doesn't pretend he didn't do the homework just to seem cool.
He loves solving problems. And when you apply that to a boarding school, the message is just so powerful. The guide says, you are allowed to enjoy academic success.
You're allowed to be curious. It even says you're allowed to care about your results.
Which sounds so obvious, right? Isn't that the whole point of school?
You'd think. But we all know students who pretend they don't care because they're scared of trying hard and failing, or just looking like a tryhard.
That whole effortless perfection myth, it's so toxic.
It really is.
And this source just counters it directly. It says, working hard in class is not something to be embarrassed about. It is something to be proud of. It's validating the effort.
Okay, so step one is just owning it, like Sheldon does.
Yeah.
But let's dig into the why. The source has this section called Your Brain Works in Its Own Way.
Which is such a reassuring title. And it brings us back to that operating system idea. The source describes students who, they might like quiet spaces or find big social events really tiring.
They prefer logic over emotional guesswork.
Exactly. And I love this line from the text. It says, that doesn't mean something is wrong. It means your brain works in a particular way.
It's a simple distinction, but it's a huge one.
It's everything, because once you stop seeing it as a deficit, I'm bad at parties, and start seeing it as a specialized tool, you can ask, well, what is this tool actually good at?
And the source has a list for that. It says these students are often excellent problem solvers.
Highly focused, deep thinkers.
And very honest. That's another one on the list.
Oh, yes. Which, if you've seen the show, Sheldon is honest to a fault.
Brutally honest.
But look at the value in that. In a community, honesty is so important. The source says boarding life gets much stronger when everyone understands this simple equation. Different ways of thinking equals different strengths.
So in a real-world scenario like a group project, what does that look like?
Okay, well, imagine there's a problem in the dorm. The Wi-Fi goes down. The social connectors are managing everyone's feelings, which is valuable.
It's okay, everyone. Don't panic.
But you also need the person who can just detach from the emotion, go look at the router, and actually solve the technical problem. You need both.
The mechanic and the diplomat.
Exactly. You need the deep thinkers who can just focus for hours on one complex thing.
Speaking of focus, we have to talk about the R word. Routines.
Yes. The Sheldon Cooper special. The bathroom schedule. The cereal schedule.
This is where a lot of people get stuck, I think. Routines can feel so boring and restrictive. We're always telling kids to go with the flow.
But the source argues that Sheldon loves routines because they make him feel calm, organized, and in control.
Okay, there's this concept called cognitive load, right? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so every time you make a decision, what to wear, what to eat, when to study, it costs your brain a little bit of energy.
It's decision fatigue.
That's it. And for a neurodiverse brain, or really any brain, the world can feel chaotic and loud. A routine is like an anchor. It automates all those small decisions for you.
So by automating the boring stuff, you free up brain power for the cool stuff, like theoretical physics
or calculus, or writing your novel. The source basically says routines aren't for boring people.
Yeah.
They make success more achievable.
Right, and it lists specific areas where this applies to a boarder. Morning organization, sleep routine.
Oh, sleep is a huge one. In a house with dozens of other students, the fear of missing out FOMO is a constant battle.
Just one more chat, just one more video game.
Exactly. But if you have a Sheldon-level commitment to your bedtime, you are going to perform better. The source is arguing this structure helps everyone, not just the kids who naturally crave it.
So we have the brain power, we have the routine to manage it. Let's talk about the social life. Because the stereotype of the super academic kid is that they're a loner.
Right, the hermit. But Sheldon has friends, a very close group.
He does, and this is a really key part of the guide. There's a section titled, Friendship Doesn't Require You to Change Who You Are.
And that's a deep fear for so many people, isn't it? If I'm really myself, will anyone want to be my friend?
So how does the guide say that works? Because, I mean, let's be honest, Sheldon can be difficult.
He can be. But the model of friendship it describes is based on acceptance, not conformity. His friends, the text notes, don't try to turn him into someone else.
They just accept him for who he is.
And it's a two-way street. That's the important part. It's not just them tolerating him.
Okay.
The source says Sheldon learns to understand others, and I love this phrasing, show care in his own way.
In his own way. What does that look like?
Well, we might think of care as, a hug or emotional validation. Sheldon doesn't really do that.
Right.
But he might organize your messy desk because he sees it's stressing you out. Or he'll offer you a hot beverage because he learned that's what you do when someone's upset.
It's practical care. Competence is a love language.
That's a great way to put it. And the source is saying that's valid. He grows, but he doesn't lose his core identity. It defines real belonging in a boarding house as exactly that. You don't have to stop being yourself to have friends.
That's such a huge message. You don't have to
Yeah.
pretend to be less smart or less focused or more chill just to fit in.
You just have to find your people.
Yeah.
And be willing to grow a little yourself.
Right.
Which brings us to the next point in the guide about holistic growth.
Right. It's not enough to just be smart. The text says life is not just about being clever.
No, it lists other essential skills, even for a Sheldon. Kindness, patience, teamwork.
And how does living in a boarding house specifically help with that?
Well, the guide describes it as this symbiotic relationship, a trade-off. The academically strong students, the Sheldons, they grow in these social areas.
You can't live with 40 other people and not learn patience. It's like immersion therapy.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, the more socially confident students, they grow in academic confidence.
Because they see that it's okay to care about your schoolwork.
It gives them permission.
Yeah.
So everyone develops. It's not about the smart kids saving the nerds. It's an ecosystem, an exchange of skills.
And that ecosystem changes the whole culture of the house. The source calls it the ripple effect.
Yeah, this is the big picture. The source asks, what happens when students stop hiding that they're smart?
I imagine it just changes what's considered normal.
It creates a new baseline. It says it becomes normal to focus during prep time. It becomes normal to support each other academically and to celebrate the effort.
Oh, I love that phrase. Celebrate the effort. Not just the final A+, but celebrating that someone really worked for it. Because Sheldon, for all his genius, he struggles. String theory is hard, but he never stops working.
And that's how you build what the source calls a strong learning culture. And when you do that, it says you get 4 things: psychological safety, confidence, higher achievement, and real belonging.
Let's talk about psychological safety for a second. That's a term you hear in business a lot.
It is. It just means, can I take a risk here without being shamed for it?
Can I ask a stupid question in class?
Can I admit I don't get it? And if the answer is no, people will laugh at you, then learning it stops cold.
But if you have a culture where the Sheldon archetype is respected, where being obsessed with facts is normal, then that safety goes up for everyone.
It allows you to take intellectual risks. And learning is all about risk.
So putting this all together, this guide is basically saying that the Sheldon Cooper approach, unapologetic intelligence, strict routines, honest interactions, is a blueprint for a high-functioning community.
It really is. It's a reminder that diversity isn't just about background. It's about cognitive style, too. A team needs the social connectors, sure, but it also needs the rigorous system builders.
So what does this mean for you listening? Maybe you're a boarder, maybe you're a parent, or maybe you just, really love organizing your sock drawer.
There's no shame in a well-organized sock drawer.
The source ends with a pretty powerful checklist. It's a list of things you should never hide.
Yeah, I think this is a great summary. It lists your curiosity,
Your focus,
your routines.
and your love of learning. These are not things to reduce, the text says. They are things to celebrate.
And that's really the core message, isn't it? Don't dim your light just because it shines in a different way. If you need a routine, build the routine. If you want to read ahead, read ahead.
I think that's a fantastic place to end. It's easy to look at a character like Sheldon and only see the jokes, but behind the laugh track is a person who knows who he is and refuses to compromise on his passion.
And in the end, finds a community that loves him for it.
Exactly. So here's a final thought to take with you. The source ends by saying Sheldon Cooper is a reminder that the people who think differently are often the ones who help the whole community grow.
And it leaves us with the question. If we want our communities, whether it's a boarding house or an office, to be a place where every learner truly belongs, are we doing enough to actively celebrate those quiet strengths? Are we making real space for deep focus, or are we just tolerating it?
Something to think about.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving in with us. Stay curious.
And we'll catch you on the next one.